iHeartRadio, Black Excellence.
So welcome to our first discussion of Black Excellence from iHeartRadio Canada. So this is pretty dope. We're going to start with, I thought it would be fun to talk about our influences of Black music and Black culture and how it kind of played its role into our lives and where we're at now. I'll tell you mine. When I grew up in a very West Indian complex. A lot of Trinis, a lot of Jamaicans, a lot of Guyanese. And I used to have neighbors who would have the massive speaker boxes in the garage blasting dancehall. So that was kind of really my first, although my dad would play calypso and stuff in the house, my first real, entrance into any sort of Caribbean Black culture in Toronto was my neighbors blasting dancehall from the garage. And this is like 1994, 1995, like 5, 6 years old, 7 years old. And that's mine. So I want to know what yours is.
Can you imagine your first introduction to the culture as all the slackness? Oh no, not joking.
That's exactly what it was. Every word for word. Don't know what I'm saying.
Edits.
Under the sycamore tree. I don't know what's
this is who we are.
Azalea. Azalea, do you know if they were Jamaican or what? Who were they?
They were Trini.
They were Trini? Okay, so you're getting a good mix. You're getting a good mix.
Exactly. It was like all the pepper seed rhythm and then it would randomly like remix into like a chutney song, but
wow. Right.
They made it work.
That's what's up.
Exactly. Well, but that's mine. I think mine was always like soca and dancehall.
Well, you know what? When you're Black or when you're of the culture, the music is a big part of the culture. I grew up in New York City, and much like you, Azalea, our city is like Caribbean culture is much of the backbone of the life, but also the strong hip hop culture. Like New York just is like in a way, and I don't want to use a word that's from Louisiana to describe New York, but it kind of is that way. It's like a gumbo of all these different cultures that come together and get squeezed together in this one tight place. And everyone's kind of taking flavors from each other. So you got the dancehall and reggae culture, you got the soca culture, you got the Latinos with the salsa merengue and all the bachata, but then you also have African American cultures with the jazz and R&B and the soul and all that stuff is just squeezed. Like on one block in New York City, you might hear blaring out of or different windows like 10 different genres of music. And as you walk from crib to crib, you're hearing all this music.
Right.
And that's really how I grew up. Obviously my house was blasting all the Bob Marley, the dance. On Sunday mornings, I'd wake up literally to the sound of our house shaking, like because my dad's bass on his system was hitting so hard, but it was between that and the smell of my mother frying her plantains. So I knew I was like, it's Sunday morning. Breakfast I cook and the music I play downstairs. You understand? Like,
and that you're about to start cleaning too.
Literally, I'm grabbing a broom or a brush or something like that, and
the smell of Dettol in the air.
Smell of Dettol and Ajax.
Yes, mixed lad.
But I credit my parents, for just exposing me to music because music was always in the background of everything we did, and that's how as Black folks we know who we are when we hear the music. You hear these little subtle things like the language, how we talk, words people use, topics people are talking about, and you start understanding this is what's on the mind of our people. So that's my influence of Black culture, just hearing music everywhere in the neighborhood and in the house.
And how has it influenced your life now?
This is what I do for a living now. It's crazy. I kind of tell people sometimes that like I didn't realize that just growing up, I was going to school for my career. Like all the things I do right now, like I'm a DJ, I'm a radio personality, I produce. I'm actually kind of like a little musicologist, but my schooling in music and the culture was just growing up, Black. That was my education in music, learning about Michael Jackson, hearing the name Quincy Jones, knowing about Peter Tosh, and Bob Marley and the I3s, and watching my dad watch his reggae Sunsplash VCR cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Like that's when I knew once I got to a certain age, I needed to get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that told me who I was, but it also ultimately told me where I was going, because even though when I was in university, I'd done everything except music. And then at some point I was like, what am I doing? This is not what I do. I do music.
Right.
And then at some point I decided that that was the direction I was going. And when I got into radio, I said, you know, this is what I bring to the table. I'm a musicologist from time. I've been DJing, you know, basement parties from I was a youth, before I was old enough to do those things. You understand? So like that, how I grew is who I became.
And even now as a father, I saw that you posted on Instagram, Kofi is able to pinpoint and know who's on the screen, who he's listening to. He knows it's Bob. My
little 3-year-old knows Bob Marley and actually requests Bob Marley at this point. And it makes me so happy.
That's so
that,
great.
like, that I've indoctrinated him.
But that to me is like so important, right? And we all have Caribbean roots, like first generation Canadians. Jamar, I know you're, you know, from the States or whatever, but it's kind of the same thing. But that's what I think is so important and almost fascinating about the Caribbean culture in terms of music. Like it's very eclectic. You know, you said earlier on, you know, Azalea, your dad will play calypso, your neighbor will play the dance hall, you know, but you know, R&B, all of that stuff. Like I just remember growing up, I could hear my dad playing anything from Bob Marley to Eric Clapton. But at the end of the day, it's just like it's good music, and the good music will always be around and always survive. And that's, you know, it's one of those things when you think about Black music and Black artists, how many decades it's spanned and how many people have been able to kind of get into the culture and take pieces of it and sustain for themselves or create a new genre. Like it's always just imprinted into the fabric of culture, not Black culture, not white culture, not Hispanic, just culture in general. And that's the beautiful thing about it, right? Like, you know, similar to Jamar and for that matter, like you talk about the big sound system, that was my introduction as well. It wasn't like I wanted to be, you know, a big hip hop superstar. I always just wanted to be a DJ. Like when you go to, you know, parties, you know, around Caravana times and you would see like, there's no rappers here, you know, the spotlight is on the DJ and the MC. So that kind of gravitational pull is what actually ultimately got me into it. But it was a very similar story to Jamar, where it's just like, you grow up and you're in a certain neighborhood and you're exposed to certain songs, but then you're exposed to other songs. And then I think another part about it being from Toronto and growing up in Toronto with our particular culture in terms of music was you had to be eclectic, because we had guys like, you know, starting from scratch, for example, who would just literally show up to any party, like, and just be able to play any format, you know, and the open format policy, so to speak, was almost like similar to what you were saying. It's kind of like this Toronto DJ indoctrination where you kind of had to be versatile, but to be honest, most of which what moved everything came from, you know, the Caribbean and hip hop culture here. And that's just what was cool. That was what was in. And that's ultimately what exposed, you know, people like myself to get into it. And like Jamar said, like, you know, fast forward 20, 25 years later, this is what we do for a living now, you know, and I wouldn't take it for granted nor change it for the world, because it comes with all of these things. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to kick back. Like what we're doing right now, it's like, this is really fun. And I can't believe that, you know, we're all just making a living doing what we want to do, right?
I know. We're blessed.
And who are the artists?
Oh, geez. Like
break it down.
Me personally, it would, oh gosh, it would have to go like from genre to genre. I mean, my thing, I kind of made my splash in the media business as a hip hop DJ, right? And I toured, you know, all over the place as a hip hop DJ. So a lot of the influences for me, I would have to chalk them up to like hip hop, you know, obviously guys like Biggie, Nas was one of them as well. Wu-Tang was big. The list with like 50, you know, my 50 and Dipset, and like the list goes on and on. But then also from the other side of things, when it was like, there was a time where I was like super into dancehall, and it was like around like the millennium, like early Vibes days, like early Vibes Cartel days, and like Elephant Man and Bounty
dark
Killer.
Dark skin Vibes Cartel or Bleach Vibes?
Like yeah.
Still dark skin.
Yeah. So, you know, it was like, that's the thing about being a DJ. It's very difficult to just kind of pick one who's like, oh, this person. I left out Jay-Z too. I can't do that. But it's all, but it's difficult to be like this person. Whereas like I look at influence and eras, you know what I mean? Like I'll hear a record and it'll always take me back to this time in my life and what I was doing. And obviously, you know, when I started, it was similar to Jamar once again. It was like DJing house parties and that, and it was around the cusp of the millennium. So like anything from that era, it's just like that playlist just runs because it's all good. It's all good times, you know?
Right. Before going over to Leah real quick, I know Jamar also used to have posters. You said on your wall of Janet Jackson, Mary J. Blige.
Yo, the posters, were
ginormous
Janet Jackson,
names.
Mary J. Blige, Jade. I had Brandy, Monica. I mean, these were just people every day. I woke up and saw their faces every day. They were,
of course, they were all women too, right?
Poster.
I mean,
well, you know, you had the Lil' Kim poster. Stop lying.
I had the Lil' Kim poster. That one was behind the door because I didn't want my mom to see that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We know which poster. We know which one.
We do.
Exactly. But yeah, right. You know, the black experience, you know, is just the music is not a passive thing. It's an active part of your daily routine. It's an active part of your mindset. You're waking up. I mean, we walk with a bop, you know what I'm saying? It's usually, you know, to some of your favorite music, and the attitude reflects how people are feeling. The songs reflect that too.
For sure. Leah, your experience.
Yeah, I just want to say we have natural rhythm, you know, because it's ingrained in us from the very beginning. So like we walk with a bop, we really do, because we have natural rhythm within us.
Yeah, that's how it works.
So my experience, a little different from the rest. Okay, a little different from the rest. I actually grew up amongst predominantly white community. I grew up in Richmond Hill, and my dad made it a very strong point to let me know where all of the roots of music came from. Because according to him, the root of music just in general is Black. Just Black. So when you hear country music, when you hear rock and roll, you think of Muddy Waters, you think of Little Richard, right? So he made sure that that was a staple within us understanding the origin. When it comes to reggae music, we didn't get right into Bob Marley. My dad wanted us to know the very roots of Jamaican reggae music. So he lists Dennis Brown, Gregory Isaacs, like the real OGs. And like he made sure for us to understand, like, yes, of course, Bob Marley is remarkable, and his influence all over the world was remarkable, but Jamaicans deep down, Dennis Brown was their guy, and he really wanted us to make sure that we understood that. Gregory Isaacs as well.
And what Jamaicans love Kenny Rogers too, don't they?
Jamaicans do love country music.
Is this a joke?
No, it's real talk.
No, country music is big in Jamaica. No,
it's crazy.
Big in Jamaica,
really
but we know the roots of it too.
I'm just teasing. Leah's my girl. Leah's my girl.
Black. And when I grew up, also R&B was such. Luther Vandross was my dad's. Like was staple. My time when I was growing up. Staple. In the 80s, late 80s, Luther Vandross. That's when Whitney Houston was coming up as well. Toni Braxton was my dad's little crush. So we heard a lot of her and saw a lot of her. But yeah, just the OGs of the base of these genres of music, my dad made sure that we understood where everything was coming from. Because if it wasn't for him, to be honest with you, who knows? I would be loving off Britney Spears and sing Backstreet Boys, which I did love. But I do know the base of where this R&B music comes from, where country music comes from, where rock and roll comes from. He made sure that like we just understood everying, and I'm so grateful.
It was their influences too.
Let me just interject here as well, because I feel like we're leaving out a large era, like the funk era, when you're talking about like George Clinton, Earth, Wind and Fire, you know, Kool and the Gang, like Rick, like that. If we're talking about like kind of the parental stuff, like that was kind of more of my dad's vibe. My dad used to like to go out and like, you know, have a good time and party. And that was the soundtrack to his adolescence, the same way I was talking about a couple moments ago. Like if I go back to like, you know, 50 and Dipset and, you know, all that kind of stuff, that was the soundtrack to mine. Right. So, but just coming up, just taking that lineage from your parents and just like what they listened to, and because I feel like they just had a better grip on what real music and good music sounded like, because there wasn't all of these other distractions, you know, like we live in an era where you can literally do everything under the sun except music if you want. Whereas they came up in a time when it's like, you know, TV was kind of limited, but that was the new internet medium, you know? So like more often than not, you'd either read a book or you'd listen to a tune, you know?
And
Well,
not
also-
only that, they were around when genres were developing, right?
True.
Like
That's
R&B,
crazy.
True.
soul, all of
That's
these
crazy.
genres were developing while my dad was growing up. That's
Yeah.
remarkable as well. And like we are in the era of where hip hop is a young genre, right? That started in the 80s. I mean, yes, it comes from all the genres that we just mentioned, but hip hop as itself is still developing. And so we're in the midst of that right now. But for
okay.
their roots is, you know, they've seen multiple genres develop within their childhood.
Let me just ask you something. At this point, right? Do we still think hip hop is a young thing?
Yeah.
We're talking about the
It's
80s,
one of the latest
90s,
real genres.
2000s. We're talking what?
I mean, in the grand scheme of
What's
things,
the year?
It is.
I mean, hip hop is young, but it's also old because, like, you know, when you hip hop as a very dedicated, recognized genre, you could say 80s, but as something that was developing and bubbling, you could go to the 70s and be like, yo, these cats were taking like disco records and cutting them up and finding break beats. And it wasn't quite called hip hop yet, but it was kind of hip hop. You know what I'm saying?
I include that because if you go back to the parties in the Bronx where it all kind of started, right? Like what I'm saying is it spanned over 5 decades, right? Now, obviously, other genres of music were around before hip hop, but with the cultural impact that hip hop has globally, mixed in with the fact that it is a very fast game to get in, meaning like you may have a record today and you as an artist will be out and no one cares about you. Yo, you know what? We're going to do like a Trinidad James. And I hate to say it because we having Caribbean talks right now.
How funny.
But what I mean is it's a fast game, right? So
in and out.
Whereas other genres, they may have more time. So while I feel like the genre has been around longer, there has to be something to be said for that, like kind of like time travel time frame in the hip hop culture. And the only reason I bring that up really and truly is because like we're at a point now where we're able to see a guy like LL Cool J, who essentially, for all intents and purposes, kind of defined the genre. Right. And he's still around and he's still getting his flowers. We're looking at Jay-Z, who's 50 years old, still around getting his flowers. So I'm just trying to say, like, if the Rolling Stones could go out on tour and sell it out, and Jay-Z can go on tour and sell it out, can we still call hip hop a young genre? Do you guys, you know what
That's
I'm
a
trying
very good point, James. That's a very good point.
But I would argue that the reason for why it's so fast paced and switching through and continuously evolving is because it's considered mainstream. It's what we consider popular music now. So that's where everybody is, you know, trying to be, and where everybody is, you know, if their introduction to music now, if their introduction is now, their introduction will be hip hop because it is the mainstream genre.
And Leah,
so
also
it has
because
to be evolving quickly. It has to.
But also, there's 2 things about hip hop that make it so mainstream. Number one, it's very accessible. Like any kid right now, even though hip hop is a Black and Latino birth genre, like anybody right now could go get a machine or download an app and just start doing some hip hop from their bedroom in Alberta or whatever. It's like not anybody you can't really access bagpipes like that. You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to do some
not even the
music.
bagpipes, you don't have to take it to that extreme. Even if you buy a guitar, it doesn't mean you know how to play it, right? Like you're still gonna have like hip hop. You're right. It's one of those things out the box, like that software developers and they're like catering to consumers who may be able to download it online. And then, like for instance, you know, I always said I wanted to be a DJ. Like around when I first started, Fruity Loops had just kind of came out, right? And Fruity Loops was like, you download the software from LimeWire or whatever, and and you open it up, and then within 30 seconds, you can make something like some sort of percussion that sounds like a hip hop beat, right?
Yeah.
So it's very user friendly in that way. So it's no surprise that the music form has become as global as it has, but also there's an element too with the culture. Like we're talking about fashion, like a lot of stuff that is cool now is only thanks to like, you know, hip hop, like acts like Kanye West, for instance. Kanye ushered in a brand new fashion for like urban environment, right?
100%.
Prior to Kanye, I was looking at pictures of myself. I was like, man, we grew up in a terrible era for fashion. Like it was just dirty.
Excel,
You know, like
big.
Yeah.
oh man, it was
Big.
parachute.
That was it.
And
Yeah.
Kanye West
Not for
on his
women,
own
though.
said,
Tight,
"No,
tight
I'm a
for
dress."
us.
He said, "I'm
But
gonna
jersey
dress this
dresses
up."
were a time.
Jersey dresses. Oh my God,
Jersey dresses.
Azalea, what jersey dress did you rock?
I had that Vince Carter one.
Okay.
And
The Toronto one?
I had a blue one, but I don't even know what team that was. I know it was blue.
Nuggets
Who
might have been the
knows?
Carmelo.
I was just
Carmelo.
looking at my jersey dress.
Yeah, true indeed. But like, yeah, anyways, but when you think about it, right, that cultural shift when Kanye came in and it was like, okay, we're wearing polos and we're doing, and people were initially like, nah, that's kind of weird. But you got to think, anybody who was under the age of like 10 who grew up and their first favorite rapper was Kanye was never going to dress the way 50 did. No. Right? They were, you know, heavily responsible for shifting the culture in that form. And now if you look at it today, it's like, you know, Amiri, and I'm like, what is all this stuff? I don't even know what this stuff is. I don't wear none of that stuff, but I'm just trying to say, like, it's bigger than music, and the accessibility of the music and the fashion and the culture, going back to what we actually first started talking about, which was like, can we still call it a young genre, has definitely accelerated, like, you know, the time, because sometimes it takes long for something to have the same amount of impact. You know what I mean? Whereas hip hop has only been around here for half the time, and let's say is like the blues or whatever, but it's got double the impact, you know? So I think there's no tangible way to measure it, but you can just kind of use the eye test and be like, hold on a second, you know?
Going back to the influence of Black music on our personal lives and on the lives of people that consume, you know, I can't really speak for any other genres outside of a Black experience, but I will say Black music is such an active, like, you can't, like, when you're Black and you're involved in the Black music scene, it's so active. It permeates, it affects so many things about how you dress, how you talk, what you're thinking about, what you do when you wake up. You know, I would need other people from other genres to speak on it. But for this experience, I will say it is an active process. Like, if you're into this, you're not just halfway into it. It's who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's why, like, when certain things happen, you know, I was hearing, you know, on the radio, on my radio station, you know, when they were playing TLC Waterfalls, they would play the version without Left Eye.
Yeah.
And that went without Left Eye's verse, the rap in there, for whatever reason, right? And that might go over a lot of people's heads. But when you're talking to a hip hop head, that's like, it's like, what is happening? What is going on in here? It's like, that's what I'm talking about, the active consumption, or the practice of being part of the Black music culture. It's like, that cannot slide. So I was like, yo, we got to put that verse, that has to go back in.
Yeah,
that's like sacred.
You know what? So
you know what I'm saying?
I think this is important to kind of shift the conversation into mainstream media, because A, we're all part of it, and B, you know, it's a pretty hot topic. What you just said right there is one of those things that behind the scenes I've had to like educate myself on as well, to be like, well, why don't we do this? And I'll give you the example. There was a Selena Gomez record that came out with A$AP Rocky, however many years ago. It was Good For You.
Good For You.
And as soon and at that point, like, A$AP Rocky is now the mother or the father of Rihanna's child. Let's keep that in mind. All right.
Wow.
So he wasn't exactly a household name, but he was household enough to get on the Disney Girls record, right? And that doesn't just happen behind the scenes if nobody knows who he is or whatever. So he was at a point of cultural impact. And I remember adding the record and playing the record and listening to the record while I was on my show. And I'm like, why are we not playing the A$AP Rocky part? And a part of it was because when I was teasing the show, in the business, you tease, you say, you know, if it's 6 minutes, we got a new one from Selena Gomez and A$AP Rocky. So I teased it that way. But behind the scenes, they'd made the call to not air the rap version of that, right? So then it was like, okay, why are we not doing that? I don't understand. We're supposed to be 18, 30, like 18-year-old know who A$AP Rocky is. Right. Anyways, you kind of slug up that hill and you get some answers, and then maybe you have some influence and you persuade them to do it. In that case, it was done. Also, our demo was a little different from, you know, some other stations who may not do that. But the mainstream media conversation I think we should have right now, because it's an important one to have, is surrounding the Super Bowl. And what's going on with the NFL in regards to this lawsuit, right? So for those that don't, there's a lawsuit going on basically against prejudice hiring practices, right? Saying, people of color, BIPOCs or Black coaches, they don't get a shot to become coaches. And when they do, it's never fair. So there's a guy who's suing the league for that. My thing is with the halftime show now, right? You have Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Eminem, right? All except one are Black performing artists, right? Last year, or how in recent memory, I can only think of Maroon 5 and Justin Timberlake, who were the only non-Black performers at the NFL Super Bowl halftime show, right? The question is, when something like this is happening to the league, how do you think that should be approached from a halftime show perspective? You know what I'm saying? Like during Black History Month, by the way.
During Black History Month, like it's no secret that, in corporate settings, Blacks are regarded as just entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Blacks aren't really the stakeholders in terms of power or the shot callers, because we don't own the broadcast entities. We don't own the teams. We don't own the league. The ownership really isn't in the hands of the people that are pushing the culture forward. And this is why a lot of these decisions are made. Like if the owners of radio stations were people who are actually of the culture, you could never omit Left Eye's verse from Waterfalls.
True.
You get what I'm saying? Like it would just, it wouldn't even be a discussion. Like she's dead. And it's like one of the greatest R&B songs of all time. So this is what you're talking about is a classic case of like, who has the power and whose power being exerted on.
But okay, so hold on a second though. So let's say basically what I'm saying is, I think to send the right message, all 5 of those acts should be like, you know what? We're not doing this.
Yeah.
Right? Because now all of it, you got how much money, but hold on a second. Just hear me out though. How much money has been pumped into marketing and advertising the Super Bowl halftime show? And for all intents and purposes, that will be the show, because the game doesn't look that exciting anymore. Not with who's in it, no disrespect, but the game doesn't look that exciting anymore. That's the first thing. And the second thing that you mentioned was in terms of like ownership. Yes, we understand that. And that's exactly what the lawsuit is about. However, the product, which is the players on the field, 70% of them are Black. So if they decide, you know what, we're not doing this. Like when you go back to the Colin Kaepernick thing, believe me, I understand it, right? I understand it. There are guys, I don't know anybody's personal scenario. Some people may have to get out there and they have no choice because they have to make money because they have whatever. And some people are at a position where they're like, you know what, I've made enough money, I can sit this one out. There was low key support for Colin Kaepernick, but it needed to be high key, because if it was high key and those 70% were able to take that knee, a lot would have changed, right? So I'm just trying to say, like, when we're talking about culture, the most influential culture on the globe, there are opportunities to have that shift. You know what I mean? There are big opportunities to kind of have that shift. And when you're talking about, corporate settings and, taking it more seriously from a person of color perspective, these shifts need to actually shift in order for that shift to shift. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to think about like how many opportunities do we need to be able to recognize and execute in order to get it, done. Maybe the Super Bowl is not the right time.
The amount of times a discussion like this has come up is endless. Right? Like we've had this with the NFL before, where we're asking, perhaps if we all united, if Black people actually united and decided that this is what they're going to do, the impact would be immeasurable, right? We know that. We said that when it came to like clothing brands that seem to be, either discriminating against us or like sending out a degrading message. We said, if we were the ones to stop buying from them, then it would send a huge message and a lot would be changed. But in terms of unifying, it's difficult, right? This discussion is not new. It's probably going to continue on and on again. Like Jamar said, it's probably not going to happen this year where they're going to unify and decide to not perform, or unify and decide not to get on the field and not play.
Well, I don't know that. Here's the thing. Here's the ace for me, right?
Okay.
I know Dre and Snoop are big business. Eminem couldn't care less. Mary J. Blige, I don't know enough about. I know Kendrick has some level of conscious philanthropy because he's built his brand on that.
Sure.
So my ace is maybe he's the Joker and maybe he pulls something off that gets people talking. Like maybe he's looking at it rather than boycott it and not perform. Maybe he's looking at it to use the opportunity to kind of have that shift, which I was talking about, right?
Yeah, they're gonna have to do that to I mean, it's a good discussion, and the timing is kind of really interesting that's happening, and that they're
while it's happening,
it's crazy. So they're gonna have to use I think if they're being conscious, they need to use the opportunity. I mean, J-Lo used her opportunity, Shakira, to talk about Latinas, and the Latin, the voice of Latinos and the immigration debate. I mean, if we're gonna be about the culture on the big stage, this is a really good topic to highlight and shine.
And this is a way to bring the audience back to the NFL as well, because wasn't there a boycott for a long time? Everyone was saying that they're not going to watch NFL anymore.
Yeah, that was the Kaepernick era.
Well, right.
Yeah.
So bringing, I think, these legends in hip hop music, to the halftime show, people are going to watch. People are going to tune in. Same thing with The Weeknd. People tuned in for it. You know what I mean? Because these are the people who hold the power.
Yeah.
These are the people who have the audience.
And
what
Azalea,
would be the call to action there, though, right?
Back to your
original
question for us about how Black music influences our lives and impacts us.
There it is.
No, I want to go back to that. That's a very big question. What people need to understand is Black music is active. I'm gonna say it again. It's an active process. So people be like, "This is not the time for it." Our music is about what time it is. That's what our music is about.
It's always
you listening to our music, you're gonna hear what time it is, what we're thinking about, what we're talking about, what are we talking about in our kitchens, what people talking about in our car ride, what are we all in our feelings about. So if they do make a point, Dames, to use the stage as the time to talk about the coaches debacle with not having representation, you're gonna have those people be like, "This is not the time for it. Why are you getting political?" But what people need to understand is when it comes to our music, this is what time it is.
Yeah, that's
hear it in
true.
The song. All the songs are about what's going on right now. And if you're gonna consume the music, you're gonna know what time it is right now. You're gonna know what we're feeling. That's what the music is about.
And
you can ask them, if now's not the time, then when is, right?
Well, that's
when would
the
be
thing.
the appropriate time to bring up, these political issues that you so-called political. Meanwhile, it's social issues and it's the issues that affect us daily. That's always the question back to them. When is the proper time? If not now, then when?
Yeah. But, you can't be, I'm not saying you can't be, but it's going to be hard to be somebody because everyone loves hip hop at this point. It's global. Like you said, Dames, it is the culture. It is pop culture.
Listen, even if you don't, some people may hate, they may, there may be prejudice or racist or whatever. You can't mistake it and you can't miss it. Justin Bieber, Justin Timberlake, they're all
influenced by hip hop.
Certain sound, and you're always able to recognize it. That's not saying every artist, like even Ed Sheeran, man. Ed Sheeran's ahead. Like if you watch some of his on the breakfast, he's ahead. He knows.
Ed Sheeran's a dancehall man, bro. Ed Sheeran loves hip hop and dancehall.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's true though. There was a little Caribbean. There still is actually. Ed Sheeran, the last with the Shape of You record, and then he did the record with Justin Bieber. Those were like all like dancehall rhythms. This guy was bringing to the forefront. Shape of You is
big in the dancehall, bro. You might get that. You might get that cranium remix of the Shape of You. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. So whether you recognize it, consciously or subconsciously, at some point. In regards to music and specifically, and that's, we went off on a little bit of a tangent with the NFL, but it's not really because it's all tied back to the music. It all ties into back to the music. So there literally in 2022, there is no way to escape it,
And I love the conversation that was brought up about clothing and fashion when it comes to
H&M.
Not even just like hip hop, but we can talk about, if we're going to talk Lisa Left Eye Lopez. Remember she used to do the condom in her glasses? People were doing that. Normal.
She put that. That's why she was left eye. She'd have the condom on her left eye.
Right. And then of course, then there's Aaliyah. She had the side swoop. Everybody was doing the side swoop. Didn't matter if you're white, brown, yellow, whatever, purple. You wearing a side swoop. And then the glasses.
set the
Exactly.
trend.
I think that like the fashion is very notable. I mean, I feel like we flew
It's
over
huge.
that real
It's
quick.
huge. Like if you think about it, right? If you go back to the early origins of like we're using hip hop as an example, just
Yeah.
because it's probably the most mainstream Black form of art, right? But if you go back to hip hop in where it started, okay, it was kind of like it was a cool art form, but there wasn't any money in it. Then when the money started coming around, i.e. the record labels and stuff, what started happening right away? It was flashy influence. There's big chains, there's nice cars, all of that. And that's just carried out throughout the entire thing, for good or for bad. But what it does is it pushes the masses in a direction. If all of a sudden they say we ain't wearing, like Kanye tried to say, we weren't wearing Jordans anymore, it didn't really work. But he was able to build up another shoe company, another brand over there, and he was able to, garner those eyes and get those eyes. Oh, I like the Adidas stuff, whatever, right? So, but it's all of it comes from hip. Like, much respect to Tom Brady, he can't do that. Tom Brady can't make me want to buy or wear something. Like, it's just it's not
and
that.
look at the stuff that people has Kanye wearing. Kanye has people wearing.
Right.
Like
But the thing about it is every company and every marketing agency knows, and every advertising agency knows, is if you want to sell and push product, whether that be retail, whatever the product is, get somebody on board. And Snoop is a great example.
Dames,
take money from he'll sell you anything.
Dames, back to your point though, like if you talk about Michael Jordan, I mean, hip hop really made his shoe what it is. Like hip hop, like
100%.
When Jordan's kicks came out, the Jordan commercials with Spike Lee, running around Brooklyn or wherever the hell they were, and they were doing all those hip hop commercials about Jordan. Yeah. Hip hop brought Jordan, like basketball owes hip hop. You know what I'm saying?
And hip hop owes basketball, like vice versa, right? Because you're talking about Jordan in terms of the shoe, but going back to like my era, it was Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson was like he was the blend of hip hop and basketball. And listen to the girls. Listen to him.
2003, 2003.
But he was really like the actual like poster boy unifier between the worlds, hip hop. And then when it happened, they had to figure out how to coexist. Like there was a time when they banned the chains and they banned the do-rags and
Jordan wasn't really down for hip hop like that. You're right about that. He wasn't like a hip hop head outwardly.
Yeah, but
the sneakers were hip hop.
But Allen Iverson was like a hip hop artist playing basketball. You know what I mean? But you think about it and you think about where the game is 20 years removed from that, right? Mm-hmm. And I have to give credit to the NBA because of all the organizations. I think they get it. And I don't work there, but this is just my perception. I think they get it. Even with
they now get it because they were forced to. Like, like it was jammed down their throats. Like,
they were right.
They were telling ball players like, pull your pants up, don't wear the long shorts, and they're like, no, we are hip hop heads. We wear baggy clothes. Like,
but at some point,
they were able. Right?
What I'm saying is, like, from a corporate level, at some point, they were able to recognize the cultural influence of the lifestyle, the urban lifestyle. And then when they had aspirations to grow the game, it only made sense to continue to merge the two cultures. It's like you got something growing exponentially over here and they want to attach themselves to you. Why are you going to put up a bridge instead of just growing with them? And I think they were able to get that, right? And not only that, when you talk about percentages of, minorities in the league, it's not like that. Like they're able to recognize, look, man, if all of these guys decide to sit down, what are we going to do? Like the Milwaukee Bucks decided they weren't playing last. Was it last year?
Yeah, they were like, was that 2 years ago? Or?
Yeah. And that was a real stand. Like it was like,
moment.
Look, I'm not feeling this. We're not playing this. There's too much social injustice happening. And there was no reprimand from the NBA in regards to that. They sat and then other teams sat and they took a stance. And I like the fact that the players in that particular league and organization are able to take the stand and they're not bottled up or bottlenecked, because these guys are big brands. Like when you're talking about some of the stuff, LeBron and all these guys, like they're huge global superstars. So to have them have the platform and be allotted the platform to protest, whether it's Black Lives Matter or taking the knee or, whatever they're doing, there seems to be a bit of a give and take there, which I think is the proper way to do business. in 2022. And I think a lot of other companies, not just sports companies, but corporate companies, big corporations all across the planet, need to like look at that business model that the NBA has and figure out how they can create a culture that can strive and kind of work in that way.
So to bring it back to the question and the impact of our lives, I think one more time we should go around and just say exactly kind of if we could not elevator pitch, but just kind of like bring it all back together. So I'm going to say for me, that influence at such a young age in dance hall culture and Caribbean, well, I'm Caribbean, I'm Trini. So the Caribbean culture is obviously huge in my life, but it kind of grew into this form of me not being a DJ like you guys, but still finding a way to make my way through the Caribbean community here. So I'm involved so much of the soca events that are happening around the city, and Toronto Carnival, because for us, the Black influence here is Marshall Montano, Kes the Band. We have all of these things, especially around Christmas time. We have Sprunter, we have Baron. So these are all influences that are in my life every single day. So not a day passes where I'm not listening to one of these artists. And I think that that's how it came full circle for me. So not a DJ, but still found my way to figure out how to incorporate this music into my life all the time, and also make a paycheck out of it.
Absolutely. I would definitely say at some point in my life as an adult, I realized that the music I was listening to as a youth really was just telling me who I was. That's the impact it had on my life. My music taught me about where I had come from, whether it be my Caribbean roots, whether it be growing up in the US, or just, the Black experience from the shores of Africa to North America. Music was one of those things that just taught me who I am personally and in the landscape of the people I'm a part of. So that's a major influence, because when you know who you are, then you make decisions based on who you are, which have become my career decisions. So that's the impact it's had on my life.
I'll take it up from here.
Okay, you go ahead then.
No, I think music, you never know where life will take you, but I think it sounds cliche, but if you have something that you enjoy and you're passionate about it, just follow it, and I didn't know that being like when I was a DJ in high school, I didn't know that. I never thought to myself that I could like be a professional DJ in real life and just like only be a DJ. I always thought like DJs had like other jobs and all this kind of stuff, but no, it's true. If you can just kind of buckle down, set a vision for yourself and really push towards it, you can get where you need to go. And sometimes you don't know where you need to go, and that's why you're just along for the ride. But music is taking me so many places. It's taking me all across this country. It's taking me in the States. It's taking me overseas and that. And I've had a great time. I've had a lot of great nights, long nights, fun nights. Like, it's been such a ride. So that to me, and echoing Jamar's, sentiments, because I feel like both he and I had very similar trajectory and a similar path as we kind of made our way to where we are professionally. But yeah, I just grateful for all the opportunities this provided, and just looking forward to, what may come next.
Nice.
Amen.
I would say having my father explain to me the roots of where music comes from and the origin of everything instilled confidence. I was surrounded by, faces that didn't look like mine, skin color that didn't look like mine. So I wasn't completely encouraged to see, greatness in myself and others around me, my siblings, but to understand that, at the base of where great music comes from was Black people, instill confidence in myself, just knowing that I was Black, and that I could create something as great as these Black people in our history have created. So confidence is what I would say I got from my Black roots, my Black understanding, and my father just making sure that I had the confidence that I needed to grow up in this country.
And all the good memories. Like, I feel like a lot of the music also, just we have all of us hear a certain song and we're just like, wow.
Actually, I think I met Azalea on a boat cruise.
Yeah.
I'm dead ass.
Who hasn't met Azalea on a boat
Caravana?
cruise?
Yeah, no, it wasn't even Caravan. It was just one of them little like parties. Like I don't remember which one it was. There was a time though I was DJ in those parties, I was like DJing the company,
Yeah.
like for the so I was literally like doing like 3-4 boat cruises a day, right? And I think it was one of it was, but it wasn't.
It
but
was
like
one of
there used
those.
to be, but there used to be some parties that were better. It was like
Didn't I
Dr.
meet
J
you
parties
at
and Jester parties.
Soca Die, Azalea?
Yeah, probably that sounds about
You
right.
too,
Yeah,
Jamar?
we probably did meet at Soca.
Yo,
Die.
you don't know. Yo, no, Leah doesn't
Azalea.
understand. Azalea is like the poster child for.
I
for
love
like,
it, Azalea.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need to
It's
take me
funny,
out,
yo.
'cause I don't know these
Everything.
parties.
I mean,
Yeah,
everything
it's-
like salt.
Yeah, it's good though.
And
It's good.
pepper.
No, to be honest though, but we ain't give you guys enough props either, man, because what you guys are doing in the space right now, both Leah and Azalea, you guys are, you're trailblazing right now. Like, Leah was mentioning how she grew up in Richmond Hill. There weren't many faces that kind of look like her, that kind of stuff. And that's the story pretty much throughout, maybe not so much in the greater Toronto area, but throughout the country, there may be people or young girls who are looking at it like that. And for you guys to be doing like, mainstream media, working on, top 40 stations, hot AC stations. And then Azalea, I know you're doing like, you got your own thing going on with like all the blog TO stuff. Like I just think it's really good. And it's perfect representation as well, right? Like it's time for some of this stuff to shift. And being that you guys are, women of color, not only just people of color, but women, or it's like a double whammy of barriers. So you guys need to be, bigged up for the roles that you've taken on and you're putting up in the space. And you're inspiring to a lot of young girls who are looking up to you guys. So keep up the good work.
No doubt.
Wow.
Thank you.
No doubt.
Wow.
That's
This
all
was
Yo,
great.
Leah, that's all you're gonna get from me.
I know. That's the first and last time he's going to say something nice about me. So I'm glad we're recording this.
And it's recorded.
Recorded.
You better write this date
That
down.
one.
James.
I'm going to watch it over and over again.
No, I didn't choose violence this morning, y'all.
No, you didn't. You chose peace. I appreciate you.
Just peace and love.